If you have been staring at your tomato plants afraid to touch them, or worse, if you have been hacking away at them with no real plan, I'm going to be straight with you. Either way, you are leaving fruit on the table. I've been growing tomatoes my whole life, and I cannot tell you how many times I have walked through somebody's garden and seen a tomato plant that looks like a jungle because they were too nervous to prune, or one that looks like a sad little stick because they took off way too much. Both of those are problems, and both of them have the same root cause. Nobody ever explained to them how tomato pruning actually works. And I mean really works, not the generic advice you see floating around that treats every tomato the same. Because here's the thing most people do not realize. The type of tomato you are growing completely changes how you should prune it. What works on one type will flat out ruin another. That is where the confusion comes from, and that is exactly what I am going to clear up for you today. In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about pruning tomatoes the right way, from the very first flower all the way to your final harvest. I'm going to show you how to figure out what type of tomato you're growing, how to prune each type without killing your yield, and how to keep your plants clean and productive all season long. No fluff, no debate, just what I've seen work in my own garden for more years than I care to count. And stay until the end, because I have got a bonus tip my grandfather taught me about the one cut you should make at the end of the season that most gardeners never think of. It is the difference between a pile of green tomatoes you're trying to ripen on a windowsill and actual ripe fruit straight off the vine. You do not want to miss that. Tomato pruning is probably the most argued about topic in all of vegetable gardening. Everybody has an opinion, and half of those opinions contradict the other half. The real issue is that most of the confusion comes from one simple thing. People do not understand that different tomatoes need completely different approaches. Once you understand that, the whole thing gets simple. So let me make it simple for you. Before we get into the actual pruning, you need to understand what is going on with your tomato plant. There are two main categories of tomatoes, and everything about your pruning strategy flows from which one you are growing. The first is called determinate, the second is called indeterminate. Now those are fancy words, but the concept is plain and simple. A determinate tomato has a built-in finish line. It grows to a set height, usually about 4 to 5 feet, and then it stops. The very top bud on the plant is a flower bud, and once that forms, the plant is done growing upward. It puts out its fruit. The fruit ripens more or less all at once, and that is the end of the story. An indeterminate tomato has no finish line. It just keeps growing and growing until the frost kills it. In a warm climate, I have seen indeterminate tomatoes go 8, 10, even 12 feet tall. They keep putting out new growth, new flowers, and new fruit all season long. Now, the key piece of anatomy you need to understand for pruning is the sucker. A sucker is a new shoot that sprouts at about a 45-degree angle, right in the crotch, between the main stem and a leaf branch. It looks like a little mini plant forming right there in the joint. And if you let it go, it becomes a full branch with its own leaves, its own flowers, and its own suckers. That is the thing you're going to be making decisions about every time you prune. My grandfather used to say, a sucker is just the plant trying to become two plants, and your job is to decide whether to let it. He was right. Now here's my honest warning before we go any further. If you do not know whether your tomato is determinate or indeterminate, you need to find out before you touch a single branch. Check the tag that came with the plant. Check the seed packet, look it up online, because if you prune the wrong type the wrong way, you are going to cost yourself tomatoes. And that is the whole point of growing them. Now the very first thing you need to do before you make any cuts is figure out exactly what you're growing. If you bought transplants from a nursery, the tag should tell you. It will either say determinate or indeterminate right on it. If you grew from seed, the seed packet has that information. If you have lost the tag and cannot remember, you can usually tell by looking at the plant itself. Determinate tomatoes tend to be bushier and more compact. They fill out wide and do not get excessively tall. Indeterminate tomatoes are leggier. They keep shooting upward, and they have a vine-like growth habit that just does not stop. Now, there is a third category you might run into called dwarf indeterminate. These have been bred to stay compact like a determinate, but technically they are still indeterminate. For the purposes of pruning, I treat them the same as determinates. Keep it simple. Here's why this matters so much. I've watched people walk out to their garden, see suckers forming, and just start snapping them all off because somebody told them that is what you do with tomatoes. If that plant was a determinate, they just made a serious mistake. I have seen folks hack the growing tip right off a determinate tomato and then wonder why they got barely any fruit. You pruned off your harvest, that is why. So know your plant first. Everything else follows from that. If you're growing a determinate tomato, I have good news for you. This is the easy one. Here's all you need to do. Find the first flower cluster on the plant. Look at the main stem and work your way up from the bottom until you see the first spot where flowers or tiny green fruit are forming. Got it. Good. Now remove every sucker that is below that first flower cluster. Below it only. Everything above that first flower cluster you leave completely alone. Do not touch it. Those suckers above the flower cluster are going to produce more flowers, which means more tomatoes. If you cut them off, you're literally deleting future fruit from the plant, and there's no getting that back. Below the first flower cluster, those suckers are not doing much for you. They are just taking energy away from fruit production and cluttering up the bottom of the plant. Take them out. Now, while you're down there, look for any leaves that are touching the ground or getting close to it. Take those off too. Leaves sitting on the soil are an open invitation for disease. Early blight, septoria leaf spot, all kinds of fungal problems start right there at the soil line, and they work their way up the plant. Keeping that bottom area clean and open goes a long way toward keeping your plant healthy. If the suckers are small, say under 3 or 4 inches, you can just pinch them off with your fingers, grab the base and snap it sideways. It breaks clean and actually causes less damage to the plant than cutting. If they have gotten bigger than that, use a pair of pruning shears and make a clean cut. And here's something a lot of people skip. Sterilize your shears before you start and between plants. A quick wipe with rubbing alcohol or a dip in a 10% bleach solution is all it takes. If one plant has disease and you go cutting on the next one with dirty shears, you just spread it yourself. My grandfather kept a jar of rubbing alcohol right in his garden cart for exactly this reason. He would dip his shears before every single plant. I thought it was overkill when I was a kid, but I've seen what happens when you do not do it, and he was right. The whole process on a determinate should take you about 5 minutes per plant. It is quick, it is simple, and it makes a real difference. Now, indeterminate tomatoes. This is where things get more interesting and where you actually have some choices to make. With an indeterminate, every single sucker has the potential to become a full branch that produces leaves, flowers, and fruit. Left alone, the plant will turn into a massive, sprawling bush. Some folks let that happen and just let the thing go wild. I'm going to be straight with you. That is not a great strategy. You end up with a tangled mess where the interior gets no air circulation, disease moves in fast, and half your fruit never ripens because it is buried under leaves that are not even getting sunlight. The smarter approach is to decide how many main stems you want your plant to have and prune accordingly. This is called the leader system. A single leader means you remove every sucker and let only the one main stem grow. All the plant's energy goes into one stem producing flowers and fruit. You get fewer but often larger tomatoes, and the plant stays neat and easy to manage. It's a double leader. Means you pick one strong sucker and let it grow into a second main stem alongside the original. Now you have 2 stems producing fruit. A triple leader, 3 stems. I would not go past 4. Beyond that, you are barely pruning at all, and you're back to the jungle problem. My preference for most home gardeners is a double or triple leader. You get a good balance of fruit production and plant manageability. But here's the honest truth. There is no single right answer. It depends on your space, your climate, and how much time you want to spend on maintenance. If you are in a tight raised bed, single leader keeps things compact. If you have room to spread out and a long growing season, Triple leader gives you more fruit over a longer period. When you're selecting which suckers to keep as additional leaders, look for ones that are positioned well on the plant, not too low and not too high. You want them coming off the main stem, somewhere around or just above the first flower cluster. Pick ones that look vigorous and healthy. If a sucker already has a flower bud forming on it, that is a good sign. Now everything else that is not a chosen leader gets removed. And I mean stay on top of it. Suckers grow fast, especially in the heat of summer, and they produce their own suckers if you let them go. I've heard folks call it suckerception, and that is about right. You let one go for 2 weeks in July, and suddenly it has 3 of its own, and your plant looks like it has not been touched all season. Get in there at least once a week during peak growing season, and pinch off anything that is not supposed to be there. Early and often, that is the key with indeterminates. Now let us talk about cleaning up the lower canopy, because this matters more than most people think. Regardless of whether you are growing determinate or indeterminate tomatoes, you want the bottom 8 to 12 inches of your plant to be clean. No leaves, no branches, nothing touching or even close to the ground. I know it feels wrong to take off healthy looking leaves, but trust me on this. The soil is where fungal diseases live. Every time it rains or you water, little droplets splash soil up onto those low leaves. And that is exactly how early blight and septoria leaf spot get started. Once those diseases take hold, they climb the plant one leaf at a time, and by the time you notice the yellowing and the brown spots, you're already behind. My grandfather kept the bottom of his tomato plants clean as a whistle. He used to tell me the ground is no place for a tomato leaf, and I've never found a reason to argue with him. There is a bonus to this, too. When you clear out the lower area, you open up space underneath the plant. Air moves through better, which helps the whole plant dry out faster after rain. And if you are the kind of gardener who likes to tuck in a few basil plants or some low-growing herbs around the base of your tomatoes, now you have room to do it without everything fighting for light. If you are getting something out of this so far, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos every week with honest, no-nonsense gardening advice that you can actually use in your garden. It is free, it takes half a second, and it means you will not miss the next one. All right, let us keep going. Now, when it comes to actually removing suckers, the timing and technique matter more than people give them credit for. If you catch a sucker when it is small, under about 4 inches, you can pinch it off with your thumb and forefinger. Just grab it at the base and bend it sideways until it snaps. A clean pinch on a small sucker heals up faster and causes less stress to the plant than a cut. Once a sucker gets bigger than that, 4 inches or more, do not try to rip it off. You will tear the stem and leave a wound that takes longer to heal and invites infection. At that point, grab your pruning shears, make sure they are sterilized, and make one. Clean cut as close to the main stem as you can without nicking it. And here is a detail most people overlook. The best time to prune is in the morning, after the dew has dried, but before the heat of the day sets in. The plant is fully hydrated, the wounds dry out quickly in the morning air, and you're giving the plant the whole day to start healing before nightfall, when moisture settles back in. Pruning in the evening or right before rain is asking for trouble. How often should you be doing this? During peak growing season, which for most folks in zones 5 through 9 is June through August, I check my indeterminate tomatoes at least once a week. In the real heat of July, new suckers can go from nothing to 6 inches in less than a week. If you let it slide for 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to come back to a plant that looks like nobody has touched it all season. Stay on top of it. A few minutes a week saves you a big headache later. Now here's something I do not want you to overlook. Those suckers you're snipping off do not belong in the trash. If they are healthy, and I mean no spots, no yellowing, no signs of disease at all, you can root them and grow yourself a whole new tomato plant for free. Tomato stems have what is called totipotency, which is just a fancy way of saying they can grow roots from anywhere along the stem. Take a sucker that is at least 4 to 6 inches long, strip off the leaves on the lower half, and bury the bare stem in a pot of moist soil right up to where the remaining leaves start. Keep it watered and in a shady spot for about a week to 10 days, and you will see new growth starting. That sucker is now a full plant with the exact same genetics as the one it came from. If you are in a warm climate, zones 8 and above, this is how you get yourself a second crop in late summer. I've done it plenty of times and gotten ripe tomatoes well into November. Even if you're not going to plant them yourself, they make great gifts for neighbors and friends. Just be honest about it. Only propagate from healthy suckers. If the parent plant has disease, that sucker is carrying it too, and all you're doing is spreading the problem. Throughout the season, you want to keep up a basic maintenance routine. Keep removing new suckers weekly on your indeterminates. Anytime you see a leaf that is yellowing, browning, or showing spots, take it off immediately and do not put it in your compost pile. Bag it and throw it away. Diseased leaves and compost can spread the problem right back to your garden next year. As your fruit starts to set and size up, you can selectively thin out some of the foliage directly above your fruit clusters. This lets more sunlight reach the tomatoes and helps them ripen more evenly. But do not go overboard. The plant still needs its leaves to produce energy. Think of it like opening a curtain, not tearing down the wall. Now, I'll say this. If you are gardening in a humid climate, and I am talking zones 7 through 9 in the southeast especially, you need to be more aggressive about airflow pruning than somebody gardening out in dry Southern California. Humidity is the enemy when it comes to fungal disease on tomatoes, and keeping that canopy open and breathing is one of the best defenses you have. Let me walk you through the most common problems I see people run into with tomato pruning so you know how to handle them. First, pruning too aggressively. If you got a little overzealous and took off too much, the plant is going to let you know. You will see wilting, and the fruit that is exposed might get sun-scald, which shows up as a pale papery patch on the side facing the sun. If that happens, back off. Let the foliage recover on its own, and if the sun is really hammering the fruit, prop up a piece of shade cloth or even a bed sheet for temporary protection. Second, you let the plant go too long without pruning, and now it is an overgrown mess. It happens. Do a hard cleanup, but here is the rule. Never remove more than about 25% of the plant's foliage in a single session. If you strip it down all at once, you shock the plant and stall out your fruit production. Take some off now, wait a week, take some more off. Work your way back to manageable over 2 or 3 sessions. Third, you're seeing disease on the lower leaves even though you have been pruning. That is likely early blight or septorial leaf spot, and it means the spores were already in the soil before you started. Remove every affected leaf immediately, sterilize your shears after, and consider laying down a layer of mulch around the base to keep soil from splashing up. Fourth, you accidentally cut off the main leader on an indeterminate. Do not panic. This is not the end of the world. Find the strongest remaining sucker and let it take over as the new main stem. The plant will redirect its energy and keep on going. You might lose a little time, but you will not lose the plant. And fifth, your determinate tomato stopped producing after you pruned it. If you pruned above the first flower cluster, you remove future fruit and there's nothing you can do to get it back. All you can do is wait for whatever remaining flowers the plant has to set fruit. It is a tough lesson, but you will only make it once. Now, if you take nothing else from the video, remember this. My grandfather taught me this one, and it is the most important cut you will make all season. About 4 to 6 weeks before your expected first frost, go out to every indeterminate tomato in your garden and cut the top growing tip right off. Just snip it. This is called topping, and I know it feels wrong after you have spent the whole summer trying to keep that plant growing. But here's the honest truth. Any new flowers that form in the last month of the season are not going to have time to become ripe fruit before the cold shuts everything down. All that new growth is wasted energy. When you top the plant, you are telling it to stop reaching for the sky and start putting everything it has into ripening the fruit that is already hanging on the vine. My grandfather used to say there comes a time when you have to tell the plant the season is over before the season tells it for you. And he was right. If your first frost date is around mid-October, you're topping in early September. If it is early November, you're topping in late September. The timing depends on your zone, but the principle is the same everywhere. It is the difference between hauling in a basket of green tomatoes you're trying to ripen on a windowsill and picking ripe, warm, vine-ripened fruit straight from the plant. That one cut, as hard as it is to make, is worth more than all the other pruning you did all season combined. And that is the honest truth about tomato pruning. No fancy tricks, no gimmicks, just what actually works in the garden. Once you understand what type of tomato you have got and how suckers work, the whole thing stops being confusing and starts being one of the most productive things you do all season. If this helped you out, go ahead and subscribe. I put out new videos every week to help you grow better food with your own two hands. Take care, and I will catch you in the next one.